Welcome back to Just Chattin', and this is the series of videos we do on Thursday and Sunday evenings just for our own entertainment. So for all you Audie fans, it's a sunny day, so he is out patrolling the yard. He heard a couple of the neighbors mowing their lawns earlier today, and, well, he has to supervise. So, yes, he is out making the rounds, making sure the neighborhood is safe for cats everywhere. I imagine he'll show up sooner or later, make his little appearance, photobomb the video as always. But meanwhile, it's a sunny day and he's enjoying it. So, when we finish with the intro, we're going to get right into it because I've got a lot of stuff I would like to cover today. Why? Because Nutmeg and the sock puppet have been very, very active this past week. Okay, first story. Now, this is a weird one, and it doesn't seem to be source-cited, but I've got the article linked in the video notes. As always, if I talk to you about something, I cite my sources, even if the articles don't. But I thought this one was very entertaining, and it came from an established periodical, which is, I believe, News International out of Pakistan. It's in the video notes. And their lead story, I guess it was 2 days ago, was that Princess Eugenie went to Nutmeg and or the sock puppet, they weren't specific, and delivered the bad news that William is working very, very hard behind the scenes to see them stripped of their titles. I would have to throw this into the unsubstantiated, unsourced stories. However, when it comes from a periodical that's been around for more than 30 years and does in fact have a pretty decent track record, at least as far as I can tell, I have to throw that in. Yeah, maybe there is something to it. Regardless, headline story, I figure most of us are going to get a kick out of this because, frankly, it's not just a question of most of us would like to see this happen. The reality is that most of us think this is inevitable, that what will eventually happen is that William and the sock puppet are going to replay the same dynamic that the late Queen's father, King George, played with his brother, the Duke of Windsor. Why? Because it's inevitable. You cannot have two people vying for the same throne. And if anybody is in the least bit mistaken about what the sock puppet's ambitions are, we'll get into that later on. So, while we are on the subject of inevitable, this one had to come up. Yes, Nutmeg, in her most recent podcast episode, which was grueling, by the way, don't even bother, grueling, she revealed that she suffered from postpartum eclampsia, and which, by the way, can be very, very serious. Of course, as soon as she said that, and she said that in response to the person she was interviewing, Whitney Wolfe Herd, having suffered the same condition, gosh, did my bullshit meter go off. I gotta tell you, it was just running into overdrive. Why? Because we see this over and over again. As I say, it's inevitable. If somebody says they had anything, uh, anything in their life, good, bad, indifferent, Nutmeg feels this immediate need to one-up them, and she doesn't even bother to think it through. So, in the Archetypes podcasts, we heard that Serena Williams' baby had a fall from a high chair, broke her wrist, and Serena, consummate professional that she is, went out and competed. So Nutmeg had to one-up on that. And she claimed that in South Africa, the housing unit, that's how she described it, the housing unit caught fire and her baby was in the building and a heater smoked a little bit. The child was on the first floor, the heater was on the second floor. Nothing happened. Nevertheless, she rolled this into this magnificent trauma and claimed she still had to continue with the tour because Nutmeg cannot bear to be outdone. Well, that one was unraveled quite easily. And in another episode, when she was interviewing the Nigerian-American comedian Ziwa, Nutmeg revealed, I use the word loosely, that she had had her DNA checked and she was 43% Nigerian. Ziwa just countered with, you look just like my auntie. Mind you, she's a comedian, so do I think that was serious? No, I think that was a joke, because it's very clear that Nutmeg really does not look like any of the people of Nigeria. Sorry, just a fact. But of course, it's been taken as fact ever since. No one has ever asked to see the DNA testing. No one has ever asked why, if she had had her DNA testing earlier, she waited until that moment to reveal it. Nope, Nutmeg said it, therefore it's true. Why did Nutmeg say it? Because Ziwa is Nigerian. So then we have this postpartum preeclampsia, and this is the first we're hearing of it. Now, mind you, when the sock puppet discussed her pregnancy in Spare, which he did, the only thing he really went into any great detail on was his theft. And that's the only way I can describe it. His theft of the nitrous oxide, getting high, and never bothered to mention anything like this. Really? So why are we hearing it now? And if it really happened, why would the sock puppet not have mentioned it in his book? He mentioned everything else. He mentioned his first sexual experience. He mentioned his frozen todger. The man just didn't hold back. But this, so, like I say, the bullshit meter is just zooming along here. And again, what we have, as we had with the previous two incidents, was the mainstream media simply taking Nutmeg's lies as if they are gospel truth. And that is getting a little hard to bear, given how many times the woman has lied. At what point are these journalists going to say, I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense? Well, I guess we've got at least one more because they're not doing it this time. So now let's move on to Nutmeg's little mercantile enterprise as ever. And it turns out that just as many people, myself included, predicted, turning the fulfillment of her as ever orders to a sketchy company like Snow Productions or Snow Fulfillment or Snow Commerce. I'm not sure exactly how they are billing themselves. They apparently have a number of names, just saying. That was going to come back and bite her in the butt. Well, yeah, it did. So here's the latest. People who went on to her website, buying her as ever stuff, the runny jam and the honey, which apparently was good but very overpriced, or perhaps the undrinkable tea. Not everybody got what they ordered. And Nutmeg came out, apologized, said they would get their money back in 2 or 3 weeks, or the company would send them another similar product. Time out. All right, before I continue, I have to tell you I'm not a lawyer. And this is not in my wheelhouse. What I am is an American, and I have a bit of an understanding of how consumer law works. If you buy honey and somebody sends you runny jam, that's called bait and switch. It's illegal. Now, the consumer protection laws are not federal, so each state has its own. There are some federal laws overriding everything else, but in general, if you have a consumer complaint, you'll take it to your state attorney general's office. So the laws can vary. Can you take money from people and not give them their product? No, you cannot. Can you take money from people and give them something else other than what they bought? Well, not without their consent, you can't. And you can't infer consent in this. They have to come back to you and say, yes, I will take, product B instead of what I wanted. In general, this sort of thing doesn't happen in legitimate commerce. And here's why. If you go online, and I'm just going to throw Amazon out there because everybody's familiar with this as an online shopping platform. You go to Amazon, you see an item, you put the item in your cart, you check it out. Amazon's inventory system, the minute you hit that buy now button, it takes that product out of the inventory. That's yours now. So the next time somebody comes in, even if they come in a split second later, because there are no humans involved in this, this is automatic computerized systems. Split second later, and there's nothing left because you bought the last one, oh well, you get the last one. And then they shoot back a note immediately saying, sorry, out of stock. And that's why this sort of thing doesn't happen anymore. Now, there was a time when it did, when people had to do this manually, especially with large companies that might have had inventory collected in various warehouses around the country. It could, on occasion, take as much as 24 to 48 hours for the inventories to be fully reconciled. But that was a long gosh darn time ago, and back when everything was done manually. Not the case anymore. So now, if you sell a product to someone that you don't have, you know you're doing it. There is no plausible deniability in this scenario. If you got 500 orders for runny jam, and you had 300 jars of runny jam, well, the last 2 orders, you're selling something you don't have. In most jurisdictions, I dare say, and again, not a lawyer, but in most jurisdictions, I dare say, that is not legal. Also, in most jurisdictions, they cannot take the money out of your bank account until they ship the product. So why would it take them 2 to 3 weeks to give you a refund? Just saying. I think there is something extremely dodgy going on here. And I understand that especially our friends overseas may not understand this, but because I know you all think of us as the OK Corral when it comes to commerce, and I get that because at one time we were, which is why we have all these laws in place now. So, are they going to be able to get away with this? Interestingly enough, yeah, probably. Because I don't imagine anybody but a diehard Nutmeg fan is buying this crap to begin with, because we've already seen the reviews. That was the subject of the last video. The stuff is dreadful. Who is buying this except one of the sugars? So, yeah, they're probably not going to complain about her. Is she going to get away with it? I dare say she is. I would certainly be a lot more concerned if I thought she was taking hard-earned money from legitimate consumers. But that doesn't seem all that likely. So I guess, what can I say? Either these people are going to make their own complaints, which they should, but I doubt they will, or they get what they get. So that's the update on As Ever. Oh, and let me throw a quick PS in here. Nutmeg was asked, which is crazy, but Nutmeg was asked about how she thought that Donald Trump's proposed tariff changes would impact her business, and she just blew it off. Doesn't affect me. And I thought, well, it's a stupid question to ask her, because this is not a woman who has any understanding of global economics or trade relations between nations. She is a vacuous starlet who carried a briefcase and showed off her tatas. Why would anyone go to her for a legitimate opinion on world economics? Well, oh well, and you get the answer you deserve. The fact is, it doesn't impact her, so what does she care? So that's only a little PS, but it was in the news. So now we have to move over to the sock puppet and the never-ending court case. And like, seriously, this is the never-ending court case. This is someone who is just going to pursue this until it dies of old age, or until the UK courts get off their butts and tell him to stop. And Lord knows, I think they should do that. And honestly, I think they should do that. But he is now spouting bizarre conspiracy theories. Now, mind you, I thought the nonsense of this relating to Diana's death in Paris 30-some-odd years ago, I thought that was bad enough. But now he's saying that there was a concerted conspiracy, and the reason they took away his security was in order to force him to stay in the UK. He doesn't get it. I swear, these people almost certainly changed the locks before his plane ever took off in London, heading for Canada. I'm sure the minute they heard that plane was on the runway, the Queen got on her phone and said, somebody go over and change those locks. Why would they want him to stay? They don't want him back. They don't want his wife. He has some crazy notion that they want to keep him there. Interestingly enough, he also has this crazy notion that the entire royal family was jealous of him and Nutmeg because they were clearly so much more popular than everybody else. Well, to be fair, he was at one time among the most popular of royals, even, playing popularity tag with the Queen herself. And Nutmeg was very well received when she first went over there. But this flies in the face of the fact that he himself admitted that he had been planning Megxit for at least 2 years before it took place. And we all saw that on the Harry and Meghan Netflix special. Heard it in his own words. This was a long-term plan from before they were married. Their plan had always been to leave. So how is this playing in there? It doesn't make sense. But that's the thing. When you start lying, the stories don't hold together well. They just don't make sense. And that's what he is throwing out now. Yeah. And in the meanwhile, his ongoing complaint, as reported in the media, and the media has been reporting this for a couple of months now, that he does not want his children merchandised, and that he was the one saying he didn't want their little images put out on social media as merchandising tools. Well, he just did it himself, throwing pictures of the kids, or at least kid, or who knows. These are the putative children to begin with. I have no idea what's going on with them and their pictures, or if it even is their pictures. throwing it out on Instagram now. So, very interesting that someone who allegedly was dead set against his little ones being exploited for publicity is now playing the same game. Hey, works for Nutmeg, right? All right, we have one more that I want to touch on before we get out of here, and I am going to get out early today, I do promise. And that is recent media coverage of Nutmeg. And she is always being portrayed as like this perfect mom. My children are the most important things to me, and I've got articles in there citing this. While meanwhile, she gets on a plane, she leaves the kids in California, she comes to New York so that she can go see a musical, which, by the way, might have been very entertaining for small children. Just saying. No kids in sight. And still the media is not questioning this. And I have a question myself about that. Why is it? And have you noticed that every time the woman's name comes up, it's mother of two and what a great mother she is and she loves her children and blah, 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 blah. Have you ever heard that in connection with any other celebrity? And Kim Kardashian has children, right? I think she does. Do we hear about her kids all the time? No, we don't. And Lord knows, Kim Kardashian actually has some reason to be in the headlines because on top of everything else, she's a successful businesswoman. And apparently, by the way, if you buy something from her company, you actually get it. Just saying. But the point is, even with people who might have more right to the spotlight, we're still not hearing this. But we always hear about this with Nutmeg and the sock puppet, how devoted they are to their children. Interestingly enough, I can think of no other celebrity couple that spends less time with their children. And these two are not even working. They are going out, well, the sock puppet is going out for a never-ending court case in the UK, stopping off in the Ukraine for Lord only knows what, apparently nothing more than his own personal publicity and brand enhancement. Meanwhile, Nutmeg is jetting off to New York. Nothing to do with business. She wanted to catch a show. It's very interesting. And I am watching this. I'm going to continue to watch this. But I suggest the rest of us do as well, just to see where it's all going. And I should tell you that alone convinces me, I'm not going to say more than anything else, but it's right up there among my top maybe 5 reasons for questioning the very existence of these children in the first place. In general, when the lady doth protest too much, methinks, there's usually something behind it that deserves to be methought about. Just saying. All right, that is what I have for you today. We are getting out early. We are going to take a look at a slideshow on the way out. Very glad to have had you with us, and I hope to see you again next week. Meanwhile, have a terrific day.